You post something online. Maybe it's something you're proud of, maybe something vulnerable, something personal that felt meaningful in the moment. Or maybe it's simply a small moment from your life that felt worth sharing. You hit post, and then something subtle happens. That all too familiar tension settles in your stomach. Not because you regret what you said, but because you can't control how it will be read. A few minutes later, you open the app again. Not necessarily looking for approval, but wondering, will someone misunderstand it? Did I explain it clearly enough? What if people judge me for this? For some people, the tension feels strangely intense. They rewrite the post, delete it, second-guess every word. For others, it's quieter. The post stays up, but they keep checking, sometimes once, sometimes several times, just to see what happens. Your words are now out there, visible to people with different opinions, moods, and interpretations. It can feel like standing on a stage in front of a crowd where everyone can see you, but the bright lights make it impossible to see their reactions. That feeling is something many people experience online, but rarely talk about. The feeling of being quietly exposed to judgment by an audience you cannot see. If you've ever felt this way after posting, you're not overly sensitive, you're just human. And later in this video, I'll show you why that reaction happens, and why those judgments you fear often say far less about you than you might think, because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And once you understand what's happening underneath that moment, the entire experience of posting online begins to make a lot more sense. Neuroscientists have found that social rejection activates many of the same areas in the brain as physical pain. So when someone mocks you, dismisses you, or criticizes you online, your brain doesn't experience it as just a comment. It experiences it as a threat. For most of human history, belonging to a group meant survival. Being accepted meant protection, cooperation, and safety. Being rejected meant something very different: isolation, loss of support, vulnerability. So over thousands of years, the human brain became extremely sensitive to social feedback. It developed powerful systems for detecting signals like approval, disapproval, exclusion, or inclusion. Even subtle signals mattered, like facial expressions, a shift in tone, a change in body language, all cues that historically helped us stay connected to the community. But something unusual happened when communication moved online. The brain didn't update its wiring. Your nervous system was never designed to handle the scale and exposure of modern social media. Instead of sharing with a small circle of people who know you, you might suddenly be visible to hundreds or even thousands of strangers with no tone of voice, no facial expressions, no context. So if your heart rate rises and your stomach tightens when you check notifications after posting something personal, that's not a character flaw. It's a very human nervous system responding to a very unnatural situation. But there's another layer to this that is even less talked about, because something unusual happens to communication once it moves onto a screen. In face-to-face conversations, we receive far more information than we realize. We hear someone's tone of voice. We see facial expressions. We notice hesitation, smiles, and subtle shifts in body language. All of these signals help our brains understand not just what someone is saying, but how they mean it. They remind us we're speaking with a real person, someone with emotions, intentions, and complexity. But when communication happens online, most of those signals disappear. Instead of hearing a voice or seeing a face, we see only words on a screen, a short post, a comment. And when those emotional signals disappear, something important often fades with them. Empathy becomes harder to access, not because people suddenly become cruel, but because the brain has less information to interpret someone's intention. This is what we might call the emotional distance effect. When human cues disappear and we begin to feel emotionally distant from someone, misunderstandings and quick judgments happen more easily. And this doesn't just affect the people reading posts, it affects the person posting too. because when you share something online, you also lose the ability to read the room. There are no nods of agreement, no reassuring expressions, no signals that say, "I understand what you mean." Often all we see is silence, and in that silence, the mind begins to fill in the blanks. When communication happens without visible responses, the brain often fills the silence with predictions. And human brains tend to predict threats faster than safety. So a simple post may trigger thoughts like, what if someone twists what I said? What if someone thinks this is stupid? What if someone leaves a harsh comment? Even before anything negative has actually happened, because the brain is doing what it has evolved to do, trying to prepare and protect you from possible social threat. But emotional distance is only part of the story. Another force is quietly shaping many online reactions: our emotions. When people respond online, they're rarely reacting only to a single post. They're often reacting from their own emotional landscape, their mood that day, their past experiences, their beliefs, their stress. Sometimes a post touches something personal inside them. Maybe it reminds them of a past conflict. Maybe it challenges a belief they care deeply about. Maybe they're already feeling overwhelmed. When that happens, the emotional reaction can become stronger than the post itself. To the person who posted, the response can often feel like a personal attack. But often, it's connected to something happening inside the person responding. This is what we might call the emotional projection effect. Human emotions naturally look for places to express themselves, and online spaces sometimes become the place where those emotions land. This doesn't mean harsh comments should simply be ignored. A reaction online can still hurt, even when we don't believe the judgment behind it. But understanding emotional context can change how we interpret those reactions. Because many responses online are not clear reflections of the person who posted. They often reflect the emotional state of the person responding. And remembering that can soften the intensity of judgment, both when receiving it and when giving it. Once you begin seeing how emotional distance and projection shape reactions online, a surprising question begins to emerge. And it's a question that can completely change how you experience criticism online. If people are reacting from their own emotional world, how much of the judgment we feel online is actually about us? That question can quietly change how we experience criticism. One of the most unusual things about online spaces is how quickly people form opinions. A few sentences, a short video, and suddenly strangers feel confident interpreting someone's character. But human behavior is rarely that simple. Every post exists inside a much larger context: a person's life, their experiences, their emotions that day, their intentions. But social media compresses everything into tiny fragments. And when information is incomplete, the brain fills the gaps with assumptions. Psychologists call this thin slicing, the tendency to form impressions about people in milliseconds based on very little information. Sometimes those impressions are accurate, but many times they are not. And when judgment moves faster than understanding, empathy disappears from the conversation, which means something important gets forgotten. Behind every post is a real nervous system, a real human being, someone whose brain is wired to feel social acceptance or social rejection just like yours and mine. But let's be honest, when criticism appears online, the mind reacts quickly. A comment can feel sharp, personal, sometimes even unfair. And in that moment, the mind begins building a story around the reaction. Because the brain reads text in a very literal way. It cannot feel warmth. It cannot hear tone. It cannot understand nuance. So written criticism can trigger a stronger threat response than was ever intended. And when several people respond at once, the brain can experience something called social overwhelm. Even a handful of negative comments can feel like a crowd turning against you. Not because it actually is, but because your nervous system processes it that way. This is why some people delete posts, why others stop sharing altogether, but here's a reframe that can help in moments like this. Though it's not always easy to see when you're in the middle of that reaction, when someone judges you online, they are often revealing far more about their own emotional world than they are about you. Think about what we talked about earlier: projection, emotional triggers, personal beliefs. All of those forces are still operating when someone leaves a comment. The person responding brings their own experiences, frustrations, fears, and interpretations into the interaction. And sometimes people aren't really responding to you at all. They're reacting from their own emotions, and you just happen to be the one on the receiving end. And none of that makes hurtful comments okay. They can still land hard, sometimes even cut to your core. But understanding where they're coming from can make them easier to manage and easier to let go of. And sometimes what feels negative at first isn't intended to harm. It may be offering perspective. Some criticism can be constructive and rooted in a genuine intent to help. A helpful question to ask yourself is this: are they trying to connect or trying to tear me down? Are they trying to understand my perspective or simply lashing out? Those important questions can often tell you whether their words deserve space in your mind. And learning to tell the difference between the two is one of the most valuable emotional skills we can develop online. So how do we actually move through moments like this? Because advice like just ignore it or don't let it bother you rarely helps. The emotional reaction is real. Your nervous system is responding to what it perceives as a social threat, and that response deserves understanding. Here are a few practices that can help you move through those moments more calmly. First of all, feel the reaction before trying to fix it. When embarrassment, anger, or hurt shows up, the natural impulse is to immediately defend yourself, delete the post, or argue back. But emotional reactions don't disappear just because we rush past them. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is pause and simply acknowledge what you're feeling. I feel embarrassed. I feel angry. Naming an emotion often reduces its intensity. That isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. When emotions are recognized, the brain begins to regulate them more effectively. Next, separate the facts from the story your mind is creating. Our brains are extraordinary storytellers. A single critical comment can quickly turn into a much bigger narrative like, everyone probably agrees with them. People must think I'm an idiot. I should never have posted this. But when you pause and look closely, the actual fact is often much simpler. One person wrote one comment. That's the fact. Everything else is the story our anxious mind adds around it, and recognizing that difference can immediately reduce the emotional weight of the moment. Another helpful step is to reconnect with your real community. The antidote to feeling rejected by strangers is connection with people who actually know you, people who understand your intentions and remind you of your place in their lives. Next, you can also ask yourself one surprisingly powerful question: would I trust this person's opinion in my real life? If a stranger walked up to you on the street and said the exact same thing, would you treat their opinion as deeply important? Often, the answer is no. And that realization has a way of shrinking the comment back down to its actual size. Finally, it can help to remember why you chose to share something in the first place. The people who handle online criticism most effectively aren't necessarily the ones with the thickest skin. They're often the ones with the clearest sense of why they're showing up. When you know your reason for sharing, your values, your intention, your voice, the reactions of strangers have less power to shake you, because you're not posting simply for approval. You're posting because you have something worth expressing. But emotional intelligence online isn't only about how we handle being judged. It's also about noticing when we find ourselves judging others. Have you ever scrolled through a comment section and felt that quick spark of judgment flickering inside you? Maybe it was a stranger's opinion, a life choice that looked nothing like yours, or a comment that simply rubbed you the wrong way. those reactions are more common than we'd like to admit. And interestingly, many of the same emotional forces that cause people to judge us online are the same ones that lead us to judge others. Sometimes a post touches a fear we carry, a path we didn't take, or a choice we quietly question in ourselves. Other times, it's simply emotional distance. When there's no face in front of us, it becomes easier to forget that the person on the other side of the screen has a full life we know nothing about. And sometimes we're just having a difficult day and reacting to something online as a way of releasing that frustration. Those impulses are human, but there's a small practice that can change the tone of those moments. Think of it as the humanity pause. Before reacting to something online, pause for just a moment and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Irritation, discomfort, maybe even envy. Naming the emotion often softens its grip, because once we recognize what we're feeling, the reaction becomes easier to understand. Then, try asking yourself one more question. Instead of, what's wrong with them? Try asking, I wonder what might be going on for them right now. Every post you see online is only a tiny window into someone's life, not their full story, not their emotional context, just a small fragment. And when curiosity replaces quick judgment, something important happens. Empathy becomes possible. You don't have to agree with someone to be curious about them. But curiosity creates just enough distance from judgment that understanding can begin to grow. And sometimes, if a reaction feels especially strong, it can even be worth asking one more honest question. Is there anything in this reaction that reflects something in me? That kind of reflection isn't always comfortable, but it's often where real personal growth begins. Because the truth is, the internet is not just a place where people judge us. It's a place where millions of human nervous systems are reacting to each other in real time. And the small moments when we choose curiosity over quick judgment are the moments that slowly change the tone of those interactions. There's a quiet ripple effect that happens when empathy enters online spaces. When someone responds with understanding instead of immediate criticism, the tone of the conversation shifts. Others often follow. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional contagion. Emotions spread between people. Hostility spreads, calm spreads, empathy spreads too. Every person online contributes to the emotional climate of the spaces they participate in. A thoughtful comment, a moment of patience, a willingness to understand before judging. These small actions create a different kind of digital environment, one where people feel safer sharing ideas, learning, and even making mistakes. Because growth requires space, and empathy creates that space. So here's something to remember the next time you share something online. That quiet tension you sometimes feel after posting. The moment of wondering how others might interpret your words. It's not a weakness. It's a reflection of something deeply human. A desire to belong and to be understood. A desire to share part of yourself with the world and hope it lands with care. And when we remember that everyone online is navigating their own emotions, judgment becomes a little softer, conversations become a little kinder, and the internet becomes just a little more human. Not because the technology changed, but because we did. If you'd like to keep exploring emotional intelligence in a modern world, consider subscribing to the EI Code. We don't just decode behavior, we decode the emotions behind it, so you can live your best life with greater awareness, depth, and peace. That's emotional intelligence, and it starts with you. If you want to go deeper or apply this in your own life, I've linked a few helpful resources related to this topic in the description below. Now there's another video on your screen that looks at a different emotional challenge shaped by the digital world.